Is going on, everybody, and welcome to the Saturday edition of the Stochastic NHL Strategy Show. I am your host, Josh Harris. You can win a gift certificate to McDonald's for a cheeseburger if you ship the GPP on FanDuel. You can get 3 cheeseburgers if you ship the GPPs on DraftKings. Great day. I don't know, we complain about it. It happens every year around this time. They just really pull back on their GPPs. And then they say there's no interest. It's full circle, buddy. There's no interest because you pulled back on them. Monday, everything filled, and they were normal size. Now they just – and then they fill like 2 or 3 iterations of it. It is what it is. Playoffs starting soon. There's usually a good 15 for the playoffs, so I'm looking forward to that. We'll be here anyway. You know what I mean? I like this slate. I wish there was, had a better chance of better GPPs. 5K up top seems very lackluster. It is what it is. I'm done complaining about it. We will play what we got, and we will be happy about it. Joining me, as always, WrestleMania, Slim Cliffy. How we doing?
Doing well. Yeah, it is first day of WrestleMania. Now that it's a 2-day event. Pretty excited about that. Went looking for wrestling shirts in my dresser. Realized I have like 2 of them. One of them's definitely not appropriate to wear. And the rest of them are all Christmas sweaters. So here I am wearing the thing that looks least like a Christmas sweater, my Becky Lynch shirt. Shout out Becky Lynch. I think she's on tonight. But we're here to talk hockey. It is unfortunate that the contests are sized the way that they are. I've had a quick Twitter thread this morning about the $4 and the $5 pretty much filling all week with thousands of entries, and then they just nuke everything tonight. DraftKings is going to DraftKings, but 6 pretty interesting games tonight. All, there's a lot of playoff implications, obviously. Islanders playing is the big one. Philly, of course, on the road in Columbus after losing last night. So there is a lot on the line for a couple teams. There's still some seeding to worry about. A couple injuries that we don't have a lot of clarity on. So we'll get to that when we get to it. But overall, pretty interesting slate, and there's going to be a couple chalky spots, but that also leaves some other spots that I like very unowned, less owned, disowned. I'm not sure how that works, but either way, 6 pretty interesting games. Kind of excited to break them down.
I'm disowned, but that's a different story. Maybe I'll watch Mania tonight. What the hell? But is Tyler here? Well, Tyler, when you get here, just say something in the chat, and we'll talk about your goalie selection last night. But it was Logan Thompson for anyone who played him. If you have someone to blame when Tyler comes into the chat, just blame him. Yeah. Let's get into this slate. Let's talk about the Flyers, who are melting down. Philadelphia Flyers, they 3.5 total heading into Columbus. The Blue Jackets have a 2.9 total. I played the Flyers last night, actually, because I figured, maybe they'd show up because it's a very important game. No, they no-showed against the Sabres. Interestingly enough, that top line gets cheaper in a better matchup here tonight. The ownership is really high, but this is a must-win for them. I don't think Torts has lost the room. It would have happened a lot sooner if that was the case. I just don't think they're very good. You know what I mean? But this is a good matchup. I like Konechny, Frost, Forrester. 16.2% ownership is a little higher than I wanted to. Or a little higher than I wanted it to be. But at 14.7, they're kind of priced in no man's land. They're not cheap enough to be a filler, but if you play them, you can fit almost anybody with them. And I am okay with that because Columbus is trash. Their penalty kill sucks. The Flyers' power play isn't anything special. They had a lot of opportunities last night against the bad penalty kill and they didn't do shit. But I'm okay with Flyers 1 here. I'm going to go to Flyers 2. It's fine. They're $1,500 cheaper, but they're still coming in with 13% ownership. I think I'd leave that more for like a Tippett one-off or a Brink one-off or adding Brink into a power play stack, something like that. I don't know if I would full stack them. Like, I think they're cheap enough to be a filler, and if that's the case, like if you have a line, you need a $13,000 line, I think it's okay. I prefer Flyers one. On the Columbus side, like I know Pythia. I don't even know how to pronounce it. Two Y's just kill me. But I know they moved Marchenko up there at times last game. I'm kind of wondering if he ends up back there with like a Nylander, Voronkov, Marchenko.
Well, Gojo's back tonight.
What'd you say?
Gojo's back tonight. So
okay. Yeah. I missed that. I didn't miss it, but like the top stacks, So yeah, I'm in on Nylander, Voronkov, Gaudreau. Like, I know the Frost Forrester connecting line has been good defensively, but it's back to back on the road for the Flyers. It's Ersson and Net, who legitimately has not been good since Carter Hart left the team. So I like both top lines here. You want to go to Philly 2 as a filler, that's fine. Columbus 2 is a filler, but like they're one of the most negatively leveraged lines on the night, and I just don't have interest there. So it is both top lines for me. I think Joel Farabee is fine as a one-off too. Like, I know they're listed as the fourth line, but he'll get his minutes with Cates and Atkinson. They actually played okay last night. That was kind of my thoughts. Sorry,
I thought you were still going. Okay, I'm
a mess. I'm sorry.
It's Saturday, folks. Give us a little break here. A couple things about this game and just this slate in general. I mentioned it briefly in my picks article. Still rolling over at stochastic.com. Free to read every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday. Hopefully, right through to the end of the regular season. We'll see what playoffs bring, but it's still up there. I wrote about the Edmonton top line in the picks article, but what I mentioned in that article, at least if you're playing on DraftKings tonight, that Edmonton line is over 25K, assuming that they're still together. No other line is over 19 grand. Like, honestly, every other single even strength line is under 19K. So it's one of those situations where you're not kind of pigeonholed into what you can play. If you don't play the Edmonton top line here and you're not playing something like a Toronto power play stack, you can basically stack whatever you want. And that's why I'm not super concerned about ownership on this slate. It's because, just for example, we'll take the New Jersey second line. We'll talk about New Jersey later in the slate a little bit. New Jersey second line of Hughes, Bratt, and Holla, 18,500. You can play them with everyone on this slate except for Edmonton. You can play them with Ottawa. You can play them with Nashville, any Toronto line, Vancouver, Montreal, Islanders, doesn't matter. As long as you're not power play stacking, they fit with everyone. So that's like, even if it's a 25% owned line, if you have this one of the optimal secondary stacks with them, there may not be a lot of people that come along with you just because there's such a variety of options in the same price range. That's why there's going to be high ownership on a lot of spots. It's why I'm not super concerned about ownership on a 6-game slate here tonight. It's because other than Edmonton, you can basically do whatever you want with your lineups as long as you're not power play stacking a couple key teams. So as far as ownership goes, I'm not really considering it here tonight. What I'm considering is the matchups. One thing that Columbus has done, I noticed without Boone Jenner in the lineup, they're not using that Voronkov, Gaudreau, Nylander line that much in shutdown matchups. They're using them more against second and third lines. And that's pretty important for the slate because that Philly top line, whether it's with Morgan Frost, whether it's with Sean Couturier, it hasn't mattered who the center's been. With Forster and Konechny, they've been really, really good defensively, and they've been able to limit goals against. Second and third lines, not so much, especially Lawton and Tippett, the second line. So I think this is a pretty good matchup for Columbus one. Gaudreau, Voronkov, and Nylander perfectly correlated on the power play. There is, obviously, there is a lot of ownership that's going to come in on them. but it's really not going to be that extreme. Like, even if they come in at like 10% or something, I'm not that worried about it. I really do like Columbus one in this matchup. The power play is what it is for the Jackets, but the Flyers penalty kill, which was a strength through the first like 50 games of the season, it's kind of gone downhill with the rest of the team over the last like 20, 25 games or whatever. So, Philly has been taking penalties as well, 3.4 minor penalties taken per game over the last 6 weeks. That's higher than the league average. Columbus not really drawing a ton of power plays, but against a struggling penalty kill, you don't need 4, 5, 6, opportunities. You only need 2 or 3 to really cash in once. And they're cheap enough where, like I said, you can stack them with whomever you want. So I really do like Columbus one. Not in so much on the Columbus depth outright, but I will say Marchenko, Sillinger, Texier. Like, I wrote up Marchenko in the picks article. He's up to 21 goals now. Goals in 3 straight. I think he's played at least 18 minutes in 4 straight games. He's getting a lot of ice time, including top power play time. But that line is just getting a lot of ice time in general. Like, Cole Sillinger's been averaging like 22 minutes a game over the last 10 days or something like that. Like, they're getting a ton of ice time. I don't know if it's necessarily productive ice time, but it is a ton. So if you want to dip down to them, I think that's fine. But I'm with Gaudreau coming back. I'm in on Columbus one here. On the Flyers side, I do like Philly one again. For all the reasons you mentioned. It's a good 5-on-5 matchup, especially once you go up against the second and third lines from Columbus. Good power play matchup for whatever that's worth with the Flyers. But, I mean, it is what it is. And Jet Greaves is starting. It's not Tarasov who got injured. Just as a brief aside, brutal week for Tarasov in DFS. Like, if you stacked against Tarasov on Tuesday, you were screwed. If you played Tarasov on Thursday, he got hurt and you were also screwed. So, tough beat for DFS players and Tarasov this week. But Greaves is in net. Tarasov's been their best goalie at 5-on-5 by far this season. It's like there hasn't been a close second. I really do like going back to Philly one here. Like, yes, there is going to be a lot of ownership on them because of their price. 14,700, 16.2%, but a nearly 10% top 2 stack percentage. Like, they have a solid total for the road. Their top 2 stack percentages is amongst the top 10 lines on the slate here tonight. It's both top lines for me. I will say, despite a complete lack of ice time, like, that Cates Farabee line is good, man. Like, Noah Cates scored last night, and that line is up to 3.1 expected goals per 60, 1.4 against. Like, they're dominant. I would hope Tortorella starts giving them a little bit more ice time, considering how well they played. So it's one. I think that Philly line, we have them as Philly 4 in the top stacks tool. I think they're one of those sub 10K lines that you can put with Edmonton if you're stacking Edmonton. Otherwise, there's no need to play them. So it's both top lines for me.
Yeah. Like, if the Flyers lose today, they're in trouble because the Penguins are winning 2-0. They're beating Tampa right now. This wild, like, at least there's a race, but it's just like a battle of the poopers to try to get that last wild card spot. And I guess the Metro third spot, just absolute ass. Toronto Maple Leafs, they 3.7 total. Heading into Montreal, the Canadiens have a 2.8. Mitch the Bitch is back. Not with Matthews either. That's weird. I don't particularly like him when he plays with Tavares. They don't have the numbers that Marner does when he plays with Matthews. I get it because Matthews, Bertuzzi, Domi they actually have been very, very good offensively. And they're coming in with positive leverage at 18,400 against the Montreal team that is not good defensively. They are not good on the penalty kill. Now, Arbor Xhekaj is out of the lineup, so maybe the amount of penalties they take goes down. But Caden Goulet is also out of the lineup. He's been one of their better defensemen this season. I do like Toronto one here. I think Marner being back helps their power play. If he shoots, you know what I mean? Like, he's a good passer, but he needs to start shooting. I do like Toronto one here. Toronto 2 is a bit more interesting. Like, Tavares and McMahon have decent offensive numbers together. You throw Marner in there. Like, Marner and Tavares historically don't have great numbers together. It is a very, very good 5-on-5 matchup. But for the extra $600, I'd rather just go to the Matthews line here. On the Montreal side, it's a 2.8 home total. That's fairly high for Montreal. I think there's two lines in play for Montreal here. The top line going into Matthews, Bertuzzi, Domi. Like that Matthews line is good offensively. They're not very good defensively. Any Domi line is not going to be good defensively. So I do like Montreal 1 here. This is a pretty good power play spot as well, and they're fully correlated. Slavkovsky, he's actually been pretty involved on the power play of late. So I think Montreal 1 definitely in play here. They're coming in right at their top 2 stack at 11.4% projected ownership. I also think Montreal 2 is in play as a filler if you're playing Edmonton. Like I can't imagine McMahon, Tavares, Marner is going to be anything special on either end of the ice. Newhook is on the top power play unit. I think you can one off Newhook as it is, but I think like you don't have to full stack. But I think like a Newhook Armia or a Newhook Gallagher is fine as a 2-man, especially if you're looking to get in a power play stack. You're looking to get in Edmonton, something like that. Other than that, like it's both top lines.
Yeah, I'll start on the Toronto side here. It's one of those things like I get what they're doing. They want to see if they can roll 3 lines in the playoffs, especially with how Bertuzzi, Domi, and Matthews. That's what I'm thinking. Especially with Bertuzzi, Domi, and Matthews, like the way that they've been playing. Because that top line for Toronto has been like they're riding hot, but don't get me wrong, they're creating a ton of offense too. 89 shot attempts, 4.7 expected goals, 6.4 actual goals per 60 minutes in just 85 minutes together, but they're creating something ridiculous, like 48 shots per 60. Like this is a line that is creating a lot of offense. So while they're humming, they're going to leave them together. What worries me about stacking that line is that it is such a good power play matchup for Toronto. Like Montreal is going to be without Caden Gooley and Arbor Jacki tonight. I would argue they're the 2 best 5-on-5 defensemen defensively that Montreal has. I think you can probably argue for a couple other guys. That's just my opinion. If you take out at least 2 of the top 4 defensive defensemen that the team has, there's really not a lot left over after that. Like that's problem number 1. Problem number 2 is Montreal has been taking a lot of penalties lately. They're up to 4.3 penalties taken per game over the last 6 weeks. That's 3rd in the league, highest on this slate. League average is 3.3, so they're 30% clear of that. What I wonder is if they don't take a ton of penalties because, Jacki and Gooley are the guys that kind of, goon it up a little bit. They did see their penalties per game go down when Jacki was sent to the AHL for those 2 months. So I'm wondering if that's just not a reflection of him being back in the lineup of Gooley and the way he plays. So it's one of those catch-22 things where I think obviously missing Jacki and Gooley probably makes the team worse defensively overall. But I also think he keeps them off the penalty kill more often, and that's pretty important defensively in its own right. So it's a really good power play matchup still for Toronto because Montreal's penalty kill is still not anything special. I'm just wondering if it's closer to like 1, maybe 2 power plays rather than like 4 or 5 like Montreal has been giving up. But I'm not worried about any of the defensive matchups from the Montreal side. Like the top line for the Habs has been better defensively since the trade deadline, but still like basically league average. And league average is not something to be worried about for this Toronto line. So I do like Toronto 1 here tonight. They are coming in with positive leverage at 10.3%, 14% top 2 stack. Like I said, maybe Montreal only takes 1 or 2 penalties here tonight, and the lack of power play correlation on that top line isn't as important. I'm out on Toronto too. You mentioned it with Marner and Tavares. They just haven't created offense. I was looking at their expected goals numbers this year, 165 minutes together, 2.2 expected goals per 60 minutes. And last year wasn't great either with like 2.7 or 2.8, which is a little bit above average. But a Mitch Marner line that is a little bit above average offensively that's just poor. And maybe Bobby McMahon will help because McMahon and Tavares have legitimately been good together almost regardless of the winger on the other side. I'm just not one of those people that's like I'd want to see it before I believe it. and that's why I prefer Toronto 1. Toronto 3, I think Toronto 3's stackable for this reason. Is obviously there's not going to be that much ownership on them, 2.4% per the top stacks tool. The other thing is like Montreal's bottom 6 is god awful defensively. Like the top line is around league average, maybe the second line is a little bit worse. The third and fourth lines are awful defensively. And there's with goalie and Jack Eye out, especially, there's nothing to worry about for defensive matchups from the second and third pairs from that Toronto third line perspective. So I think that third line is in play, but that's definitely more of like if I was making 20 lineups, if I was making, I don't know, is it even a 150 max tonight? 150 lineups. I'd be more inclined to do it. I probably won't do it in a single entry. I'd probably just play Nylander as a one-off, but I do like the Toronto top line. On the Montreal side, I agree with you. Montreal 1, like firmly in play. Like the Toronto penalty kill has been getting a little bit better over the last 5-6 weeks, but it's still been like middle of the road, and like that's nothing really to fear. Montreal coming in pretty much bang on their top 2 stack percentage. They've been playing extremely well offensively, 3.1 expected goals, 4.3 actual goals per 60 since the trade deadline. They're all playing like around 20 to 22 minutes, once you get to Nick Suzuki per game. So there's a ton of ice time. I really do like Montreal's top line as well here. I'm not in so much on the second line. Like any line that's under 9K, if you're playing them with Edmonton, is kind of playable, any second or third line. But I do think Marner and Tavares, at the very least, will be pretty good defensively. Offensively, I don't think there's going to be much to speak about, but at least defensively, I think they'll be fine. So, one off Newhook, certainly because of his price and power play status. One off Armia. I just don't know about stacking. I think it's both top lines and maybe Toronto 3 if you're playing a bunch of lineups.
Yeah, I think a Nylander one off is a nice little play here tonight. The $15 on DraftKings is 47 max, by the way. Not even close to 150. New Jersey Devils with a 3.4 total heading into Ottawa. The Sens have a 3.2. Funny enough, the Sens with a 3.2 total is the highest road total or the highest home total on the slate. And it's honestly not particularly close. This chat we're losing it. Oh my God, that was good. I don't even know who that is, but we love to see it. The Devils going Nico Hischier, Timo Meier, Dawson Mercer, which is interesting. From this point, you take Jesper Bratt away from Nico Hischier, and the defensive numbers just fall off a cliff, right? Meier, Hischier, and Mercer, they have a small sample together, and they're awful defensively. So I think that puts Ottawa 1 in play here tonight. Tkachuk, Pinto, Batherson. Now, we talked about it on the last stream. I don't think they are high event enough where you're like super excited about it, but it's a 6-game slate. It's not a 12-game slate. I think you can consider them. The issue here is that's their only line here tonight because Tim Stützle is out. I'm hoping Ridley Greig moves up with Giroux and Joseph. I have no faith that it will be. It should be.
I saw a tweet that Matthew Joseph was taking face-offs after practice this morning.
So it may not be. That would be unbelievably idiotic. Like, I don't know. They're trying to like stunt Ridley Greig's like progression. I don't know. But they're kind of a one-line team here tonight, but this is a good matchup. Like the Devils aren't very good defensively. Siegenthaler is back, which helps them a little bit. Their goalies are a bit better since the trade deadline, but it's still a pretty good matchup here. So I am in on Ottawa 1. On the Devils side, I don't really want to play a negatively leveraged Dawson Mercer line. The thing is, like, Timo and Nico have very good numbers together. You throw Mercer into the sample, it gets a little bit muddy, but it's a small sample. It could be noise. Like, Mercer can handle himself offensively, so, like, I don't mind it. But then, like, do I go to the Hughes, Bratt, Hall line? Like, I don't want to play a Hall line that's 25% projected. I think the one thing I would do here is maybe power play stack. But again, like, I don't love it, but it's probably the way I would play New Jersey here tonight. Because I'm not a Mercer guy. I'm not a Hall guy. So I'd probably try to get as many power play people in as I can. Do like Nico, Timo, Jack, or like Bratt, Jack, and Nico, something like that. If you want to add in the little Hughes, that's fine. But, I don't think he's truly necessary. So it would be some sort of Devils power play stack and Ottawa 1.
Yeah. I'm kind of with you on the Devils power play stack here for a few reasons. One, Ottawa has been seeing their penalties go up a little bit. They're at 3.5 times shorthanded or minor penalties taken per game. Over the last 6 weeks. And the penalty kill has struggled. I mentioned it in the picks article when I was talking about Jack Hughes, but Ottawa is, I think it's bottom 10 in the league by expected goals against. 20th in the league by expected goals against on the penalty kill over the last 6 weeks, and their goals against is even worse. Like, I don't know if anybody saw that goal that I forget who it was that scored. Was it? It was from the Florida game. Was it Evan? It wasn't Evan Rodriguez that banked it in off his head.
No, it was.
Was it Sam Reinhart? Yeah, was Sam Reinhart? No. Anyways, whoever it was, the goaltending is just not held up very well for Ottawa, and they have been taking more penalties. So I'm not as concerned about ownership as I mentioned, but I do think just power play stacking New Jersey is a way to go here. Like you said, take out Holla, put in Hischier as the winger instead. Put it, on that second line with Hughes and Pratt, just 5-man stack them. I would probably put in Luke Hughes just because he is cheap enough to bring down the average cost per player on the line. I really do like the New Jersey power play in this matchup. You expect some sort of response game from Ottawa after getting their brains beat in 6-0, but without Tim Stützle, and we're not fans here of him, but without Josh Norris, like, they have a few key injuries across the lineup that they're kind of working through. It's like, how do they really respond to that? And I think you're seeing it with the Devils having that 3.4 total, which is the fourth highest on the slate. On a slate that includes Edmonton and Toronto playing 2 non-playoff teams. So I really do like the Devils power play here. If I were to stack an even strength line, it would honestly be Hughes, Bratt, and Holla. The reason is if Stützle's out, they have no choice but to send the Tkachuk, Pinto, Batherson line out against, I think it's going to be Hischier and Meyer. Maybe they won't. Maybe they just send them out against Bratt and Hughes. But they have no choice but to go into that matchup. And I think that could, against the second and third lines, against the second and third pairs from this Ottawa team, I think it'll work real well. So it'd be the Hughes, Bratt, Holla line, if anything, but I like a New Jersey power play stack. On the Ottawa side, like, with Stützle out, I think Pinto just goes to the top power play unit.
Hopefully.
Well, you never know. But they would need somebody to take the face-offs. Like, Brady Tkachuk can take some. But I assume Pinto would just go to the top power play. We don't have any real confirmation on that. It would make them perfectly correlated on the power play. Thing is, the Devils have a really good penalty kill. Like, it's one thing that they've had basically all season over the last 6 weeks. 7th fewest shots against per 60 while they're shorthanded. 3rd fewest goals against. They don't take a ton of penalties either. Ottawa would have to do it all at 5-on-5, which is possible. That top line is probably going to have to play a lot of minutes without Stützle out too. Like, this line could play like 21, 22 minutes. So in that sense, I think they're in play. But for me, I'm way more on the Devils side in this game.
Yeah, it's the minutes things for me. Like, I like Brady Tkachuk may play 25 here tonight. But, like, I'd much prefer, I think, to play Nashville 1 here tonight. around the same price. And let's talk about that game now. Maybe I'm just a Nashville slappy. I don't know. Nashville Predators, great city, by the way. 3.0 total heading into Long Island, miserable city, by the way. The Islanders have a 2.9 total. This is a huge game for the Islanders. They're currently third in the Metro. It would be insane, like, if all these teams just melted down and, like, Pittsburgh ended up there, but, like, who knows? These lines and power play units for the Islanders, just they I don't know. Waz searching, who knows what he's doing. What I do know is they've been sending out JG Pageau and Holmstrom in a shutdown at home at times, and they're just not good. And they're going to get that Forsberg, O'Reilly, Nyquist matchup, and they're getting positive leverage here at 18-9. The price isn't really prohibitive, especially on this slate. Can't fit them with Edmonton, but okay. It's a good power play matchup. It's a good 5-on-5 matchup, and they've been humming all season pretty much. So I'm very much in on Nashville 1 here. I prefer them to Ottawa from an ownership standpoint and an actual matchup standpoint. I'm in on Nashville 1 heavily here. They're one of my favorite. You throw everything into the mix, like ownership, matchup, all that. They're one of my favorite lines of the night. Nashville depth, I'm not so keen on. They are like Novak Evangelista, Jankowski, cheap enough to get in with Edmonton. I think if I was stacking Edmonton, that would be a line I would be considering. I think Evangelista one-off is fine. A Novak one-off is fine. But other than that, like, I don't think going to the depth for me makes much sense. On the Islanders side, like, if they loaded a power play unit, I'd have interest, right? You put Horvat, Barzell, Nelson, Palmieri, and Dobson. I'd have interest. But these power play units are absolutely atrocious. So, like, what do you do here? It's Dobson, Barzell, Pageau, Horvat, Zizekas, and then Riley, Pulak, Palmieri, Nelson, Lee. So, like, I don't really want to play. Like, I guess you could play Nashville 1, but, like, again, 16-4 with Casey Zizekas there. Okay, we're not above playing Casey Zizekas. Cliffy played him the other night, but like the way you attack Nashville is on the penalty kill. They should just load a unit, and I'd be happy about it. I think both Islanders' top 2 lines are in play. It's just like, what are you doing? Like, I think I would go to Nelson, Palmieri, Engvall in this scenario. They just have a longer history of being better. You get Palmieri and Nelson on the second power play unit. It is 2 defensemen, but like, you can just add in Riley or Pulak. It's fine and go about your day. But like, I much prefer the Nashville side here.
Yeah, I'm not going to go long in the Islanders because I'm kind of with you. Like, I'm just out on the top line. Like, yes, I did play Casey Zizekas, and I would play him again. This isn't really a great matchup to play Casey Zizekas. Like, when I played him, they were at home to Chicago. Like, this is not the Chicago Blackhawks coming to town. And Zizekas and Barzal, here's a big surprise, have not been good together. Nearly 90 minutes together at 5-on-5, 51 shot attempts for, 60 against, 1.7 expected goals for, 1.9 against, 2.1 actual goals for, 3.4 against. Like, they're just getting buried. I think Patrick Waugh, the honeymoon phase is over, I guess you could say here. There are better matchups against the depth from Nashville, but I'm out on that line. What I will say about Lee, Pageau, and Holmstrom is that at least Lee and Pageau played moderately well together. I don't think Simon Holmstrom helps that line whatsoever. I'm going to be honest. I'd even try out Kyle McLean on that line before I would put Simon Holmstrom back there. But Lee and Pageau have been decent they're each on one of the power play units. Like, I guess they're fine. The only reason you play them is if you're playing Edmonton. It is Islanders too that I would play on that side. They under Patrick Waugh, 135 minutes together, 2.6 expected goals for, 1.8 against. They're shooting 4.5%, which is the big problem for their offense. Like, they haven't been able to convert, and that's one of the reasons why they got broken up after a handful of games under Waugh. But they're the only line that I have any real faith in to actually not get their brains beaten here tonight. I'm in more on the Nashville side. I'm with you. I would rather play Nashville here tonight than I would play Ottawa, especially when you consider that there's lower ownership, even though I don't think it's that big of a deal. That Nashville top line, 11.4% top two stack. It's number 6 on the slate. And I think it's no, I was going to say Edmonton's on the road, so never mind. 11% top two stack, 4.2% ownership. They've been just dominant since the trade deadline. 83 shot attempts, 3.4 expected goals, 3.7 actual goals per 60. The one saving grace for the Islanders is that they've been taking 2.1 minor penalties per game over the last 6 weeks. That's almost nothing. League average is 3.3. Like, they're taking considerably less than that. So if they just don't take any penalties, or maybe just take one, they could probably get away with not allowing a lot of goals. If they get up to like 3 or 4, they might get into some trouble because that penalty kill is still very bad. I do like Nashville 1. I agree with you on Novak and Jankowski. That's another line that has been dominant pretty quietly. Novak, Jankowski, and Luke Evangelista since the All-Star break, 165 minutes, 80 shot attempts, 8-0 for per 60 minutes, 47 against. They're just throttling the opposition. Evangelista still in the top power play unit. He's at like 2.3 shots per game in his last 20 games, so he's chipping in quite well. I do think they're a line you can use with Edmonton, but Nashville 1 is a line for me in this game.
Yeah. I was surprised that their ownership was pretty low, but like, I don't know. I mean, they only have a 3 road total, which is one of the lower road totals on the slate, so maybe that's what it is. Edmonton Oilers with a 3.6 total heading into Calgary. The Pilot Lights have a 2.9 total. This game's a mess, like an actual mess. Like, Edmonton whooped Colorado's ass at home last night. Now they're going to Calgary. Calgary's a mess. So, like, Edmonton is back-to-back on the road. Edmonton back-to-back on the road with a $25,000 line with a 31% top two stack, 5% projected ownership. And Backlund didn't skate. We have no idea what their lines are going to be.
Yeah, just a quick update on that. Michael Backlund, it looks like he's a game-time decision. He wasn't at morning skate. Connor Zary back in the lineup after being a healthy scratch. Byron Pospisil probably getting suspended, though. Andrew Mangiapane didn't see an update, but it looks like he's still out. And they completely blew up their lines in the last game. So
if Backlund's out, there is no semblance of a center or a line that can remotely contain McDavid here tonight. Doesn't matter if it's McDavid, Nugent Hopkins, Hyman, McDavid, Draisaitl, Hyman, McDavid, me and you. Like, he's rolling tonight. 5% ownership is what gives me tremendous pause here. You know what I mean? Like, I know they're more than 50% of your salary, but like, there is nothing that scares me on Calgary. And if Backlund is out, even if he plays, he's a game time decision. I don't know if it's an illness. I don't know if it's an injury. He's not 100%. I'm in on Edmonton 1. Now, the question is, obviously, if you're playing single entry or even if you're MMEing, you're 47 maxing the 15, is like, who do you play them with? I think there are lines here, right? If you min punt defenseman, that's 5,000. You need and a $7,000 goalie, right? You need 38,000. So at worst, the most expensive line you can put them with is 12,700. You need lower than that to actually have a goalie and defenseman. So like, there are lines. It's just not pretty. Now, Are they going to go like Colorado won nuclear and put up 115 DK points? It's certainly possible. Just because of the price, I'm leaning towards fading, but it makes me extremely nervous because this is an unbelievable matchup. And, we've seen this line in way worse matchups absolutely just break slates wide open. So I'm very much in on Edmonton 1. I don't know if I'm going to get in single entry just because of the price, but they're my favorite line on the night, like ownership and price agnostic. Calgary side, like, if like depending on lines, like a Kadri one off, a Sharon Govich one off, but like I'm certainly not running out to play Calgary here tonight.
Well, I mean, who do you play from Calgary? Like you said, maybe some
Connor Zary, baby.
Yeah, like Kadri, I think makes fun of one off. We'll talk about defensemen. I'm gonna say Andrei Kuzmenko could probably be a fine one off here tonight. It is what it is.
Like, he's so cheap, and on the power play, you could do it. Yeah.
Like the thing is with Calgary, if you could make a stack, and then there are cheap lines in the Vancouver Los Angeles game that starts at the same time that you might be able to swap to if there's something that you don't like on Calgary. But until I can't say what lines to play for Calgary because we legitimately have no idea what the lines are. The only duo that I feel somewhat confident in actually playing tonight is Kadri and Kuzmenko, and they've been good, but they're riding a really hot shooting percentage. They're not actually generating that much offense. 55 shot attempts, 1.9 expected goals, and they're getting run over defensively. So it's the Edmonton side that I have a lot more interest in. And I'm going to be honest, Edmonton has 3 playable lines here tonight. Like, yes, obviously the top line, they don't need a lot of mentioning. I wrote them up in the picks article today just because, kind of show how ridiculous their pricing is. They're 25,300, no lines above 19K, 31% top 2 stack, 5% ownership. Calgary has really struggled on the penalty kill. I was looking since the trade since they traded since they started sitting Noah Hannafin as they were about to trade him. 21st by shots against, 29th by goals against on the PK since losing him and Tanev in a trade. That leads me to want to play the Edmonton top power play guys, but the Edmonton top power play guys are super expensive, obviously. So I think this is a case where if you want to take out Draisaitl or Hyman, I would probably take out Draisaitl. But if you want to take out one of those guys and put in Nugent Hopkins to save a couple K, so you can actually afford some defensemen or a reasonable secondary stack, I think that's fine. But considering how bad the Calgary penalty kill has been, Edmonton's been drawing more power plays of late. I think it's just the Edmonton top line that I'm interested in here. If you want to dip down to a cheaper Edmonton line, I think it's fine to play Nugent Hopkins, Henrik Fogel, but Henrik only played 12 minutes or something like that last night. He didn't get a lot of ice, or was that the third line that didn't get a lot of ice time? I think it was Henrik. Yeah, Henrik played 11 and a half minutes last night. Yeah. So it's, they're really not going to get a lot of ice time. It's the top Edmonton power play guys that I like just because, not only do they pretty much dominate, but this is actually a good power play matchup because Calgary's penalty kill has really struggled over the last month. So that's where we are.
Yeah. I mean, it's a price tolerance thing. If you find something you like with them, you play them. You know what I mean? Let's get to the last game of the night. Vancouver Canucks with a 2.7 total. Heading into LA, the Kings have a 2.8. It appears Philip Deneau will be back tonight. One of their beat writers said, expecting Phil Deneau to make his return to the lineup tonight after our chat with head coach Jim Hiller. Still no Carl Grundstrom. They didn't say where he's going to be, but I would imagine he slots right in between Moore and Arvidsson, and Pierre-Luc Dubois goes to the third line with Fiala. This is actually a pretty interesting matchup, despite the low total, because Vancouver, for most of the season, has been very, very good defensively. But that was Besser, Miller, and Suter, and they would go out there with Hughes, right? But now it's Pettersson, Besser, Hoglander, JT Miller, Garland, Joshua. These lines, you have 2 better offensive lines like total. Like Pettersson had struggled to find consistent line mates when JT Miller and Besser were together. Now you're sacrificing a little defense, right? Pettersson, Besser, Hoglander, pretty high event. JT Miller, Garland, Joshua, definitely high event. So I think this is a little bit better matchup than it appears. I think Kempe Kopitar Byfield is perfectly fine here. I think Arvidsson Moore Deneau, assuming it's him, is perfectly passable. Like if Pierre-Luc Dubois and Fiala are on the third line, I mean, like it depends what the Vancouver third line is. Like if it's Bluger, McKay, Podkolzin, don't mind them. There is an iteration of their bottom six where like they could be decent defensively, but I don't know if the coach is really. I think the coach is just trying to find some line combinations that they can figure out for the playoffs. So they're just kind of mixing and matching right now. So I'm in on the Kings' top two lines here. On the Vancouver side, like this is just a tough matchup. Kings have been excellent defensively. If anything, I think it would be Pettersson, Besser, Hoglander. Just because I think the Kopitar line is going to go out against JT Miller, Garland, Joshua. And then, it's a little bit better matchup with Deneau, Moore, and Arvidsson. But, like, I'm not running out to play Vancouver here. I'm more on the Kings side, and I think there's two playable lines.
Yeah, if anything for me on the Vancouver side, it would probably be Pettersson, Besser, and Hoglander, just because Besser and Pettersson and Hoglander have played so well, basically since they've been put together, and regardless of the winger that they've had next to them. And like we mentioned in the last time Vancouver was on the slate that we had a show, now you finally get two guys on the top power play unit. And the Los Angeles penalty kill, as good as it was for like the first 55 games of the season, give or take, has gone on a little bit of a slide of late. They're allowing more shots. They're allowing more goals. We know how good the Vancouver power play can be when it actually is rolling. I don't mind Vancouver 1 here, but I think it would be more of a 20 max MME play for me. I would rather play the Kings side. That Kings top line, 5.2% top stack percentage, 3.1% ownership, so not a ton on them. These Vancouver lines, 2.9 expected goals against for the top line, 2.8 expected goals against for the second line. They aren't big samples yet. But, Pettersson has struggled at times defensively. That's why they've tried a lot of different wingers beside him all season long, basically. So I do like Kempe, Kopitar, Byfield. The one thing that worries me is that Byfield was moved off that line in the last game. And then with him off the line, that's when I think they scored their extra goal to beat San Jose 2-1. And if you have Byfield in the stack and then all of a sudden Arvidsson's up there, because it was Arvidsson that was moved to the top line, it's like a $1,200 difference or something on DK. Like you won't be able to swap up. Just something that to keep in the back of your mind. But yeah, I really do like Los Angeles 1 here. So LA 1 and Vancouver 1 for me in this game. I agree. I think LA 3 with Dubois and Fiala down there are playable. But for me, it's another situation where it would basically only be in stacks where I'm playing Edmonton. Like I'm not running out to, or like a Toronto or New Jersey power play stack. Like I'm not running out to play them with like Ottawa 1 or something like that.
Yeah, agreed. Of course, now my internet decided to go poopy, but it's okay. Let's talk a little bit about defensemen here. If I am spending up, I think it would go Yossi 1, Bouchard 2, Uyghur 3. Do you agree?
I have Werenski 1, Yossi 2, Uyghur 3. I don't have Bouchard there.
Okay, so you disagree. I do think Werenski is a good play. Yeah, I mean his peripherals have been crazy of late, so yeah, I think he is definitely a good play as well. I don't know. I'm just high on Nashville here tonight. Well, it's obvious, but yeah. Anyway, who else are you liking? Because I have completely lost my train of thought.
I mean, Mike Matheson, like with Goalie and Jack out, Matheson it's one of those games where he, in the right situation, he could push 30 minutes, I think. So Matheson, Chychrun for sure for Ottawa. His peripherals have been great as well. Ryan Pollock leading the Islanders in ice time over the last couple weeks, and getting, on average considerably more than Noah Dobson. So Pollock at 4K. Also mentioned Travis Sanheim. He's getting some good ice time still for Philly. Not as much as Cam York, but I think Sanheim's actually kind of like a better offensive player. Then it's a pretty good matchup against Columbus. I think a lot of people are still going to play Drysdale because of that top power play building, and I think going to Sanheim instead makes a little bit of sense. For cheap defensemen, I'll start with Montreal again. With those two defensemen injured, Savard and Jordan Harris, I think make a lot of sense if you want to pay down instead of paying up for Matheson. Luke Hughes, love the New Jersey power play here tonight, so I really do like Luke Hughes at 3,900. Jamie Drysdale, I still think is fine for Philly. Both Goodbranson and Provorov on the Columbus side. Also mentioned Jake McCabe. Like, Morgan Riley's back, but I think that hurts guys like Connor Timmins and maybe TJ Brody, maybe Giordano, more than it would hurt McCabe. Like, I still think McCabe's going to get 21, 22 minutes or whatever, and it's a pretty good matchup for him. Super cheap guys. I wrote up Alex Carrier in the picks article. More ice time for him of late means more block shots, and he leads Nashville's defenseman in block shots per minute this season. And Carson Soucy for Vancouver. Not a bad situation for him to rack up block shots either. He's 2,700. He's been playing like 18, 19 minutes. So not bad for 2,700 if you need another cheap guy.
I think with the mess that Calgary is, there's a couple min price guys you could play. Is Paschal, I think. He's on the third pair, but he's playing in price. You did mention Drysdale. He played 23 minutes last night, and he only came up to 3,400. But I do agree that I think Sanheim's my favorite on the Flyer side. Let's talk about some goalies here. Goalie's always atrocious. This is especially atrocious because there's no Saros, there's no Sorokin. Like, Markstrom is in a pretty rough spot. I think Montembeault at 6,900. It's interesting. I'm always interested in Montembeault, but if you can get him under 7K, I think I like that. I like Semyon Varlamov for the same reasons why I like Nashville. If the Islanders win, it's not because they, outpaced Nashville in a high-scoring game. I think it's because Varlamov won them that game. I think Jake Allen is fine. It's a one-line team against Ottawa, and that's probably my spend-up option. I think Talbot is okay, but I don't think I would go past Allen at 7,900 if I didn't have to.
Yeah, I like both goalies in that Nashville Islanders game. It's actually going to be Sorokin. It looks like that's going to start. I wrote up Varlamov in the picks article. Then Sorokin, it looks like, was in the starters net. It doesn't really make a huge difference to me. I like both goalies in that game, just depending on what you do with the rest of your lineup. If you want to pay down, I don't think Jet Greaves is a particularly great goalie, but Philly just doesn't have a good power play. And as long as Greaves doesn't get blown up at 5-on-5, I think he can be okay. So, it's a lot of ifs, but if you're looking for a super cheap goalie, I think he's fine. I'll mention Calvin Pickard. I don't play $8,300 goalies on the road, and I won't be playing him here tonight, but this Calgary team they're struggling, man, and they just do not have a lot other than their defenseman providing some offense. So I'm not necessarily, like I said, I'm not playing Pickard, but I think he's playable at 8,300.
Yeah, I think I agree. I'm never up in that range. So maybe I should be, because I have, I don't know. Don't have time. Who you liking for your hat trick pick?
Going to New Jersey, and I'm going with our buddy, Mr. Meyer, Timo.
Stratsvutia, going Dmitry Voronkov.
I don't know where that came from, but I like it.
Yeah, I'm a third Russian, they tell me. But we will be back on Tuesday. It's more of a traditional NHL mishmash smash of games next week. It's like 2, 12, 3, 13, something like that. So we'll be here next week, Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, assuming there's playable GPPs. And we'll see you then. And good luck, everybody, tonight.
Good luck tonight, everyone, and enjoy WrestleMania.